Hi, I'm Greg McIntyre with the Elder Law Report. I am an elder law attorney. It is a snow day today, and I have attorney Samantha Gordon, managing attorney in our Charlotte office. We are talking special needs trust today. We'll also hit supplemental needs trust, which are essentially the same things, and we'll talk about what the differences are. So, Miss Gordon, Attorney Gordon, in our practice, it's important for us to handle special needs planning, understand what it is, because why?
So the most basic way to explain it and simple way to explain it is if you have someone in your life that is on a government benefit that may be income based, or if you have an individual that has some type of possible disability or some type of need where they should not inherit outright, where they should not receive the inheritance themselves, and you need a vehicle to receive that for them, to either manage the money for them, to make sure they're not disqualified from their government benefit, or both. A special needs trust is a really good tool to do that. You have your special needs trust, which is a legal vehicle where you appoint a trustee to manage that inheritance for that individual for their health, their maintenance, and their needs, while also allowing them to still get those government benefits and also not disqualifying them from those.
Absolutely. So let's say I have 6 children, and I do. And I hope that none of them ever becomes disabled. I hope that all my grandchildren, none of them are disabled or become disabled. But I don't know if that will be a reality. It could be. Should I still plan for a potential disabled child or grandchild in my estate plan?
You certainly can. That would be with something called a supplemental needs trust.
So what's the difference between a special needs trust and a supplemental needs trust?
So a supplemental needs trust is going to be, well, let's go to a special needs trust. So a special needs trust, as I've explained, you can have a first party special needs trust or a third party special needs trust. So it's immediately saying that if I set up a special needs trust for if I have a child that is disabled, making sure that any inheritance that they get, it goes into that special needs trust, and it's automatically going to be handled by that trustee. Whereas a supplemental needs trust can be created if it is needed. And so it's whether or not you want to direct that off the bat, or if that's something that may need to be created in the future.
So I would put my supplemental needs trust and how that would work if I had a disabled child, grandchild, somebody I was giving my assets to, my money to, that it might hurt a benefit that might be on. The supplemental needs trust would be written into my will as a subtrust, or in my existing trust I set up during my life as a subtrust of that trust.
Correct.
Right. And we draft those all the time into our wills and trust. If I set up a trust during my life for someone, is what you're saying, a first party special needs trust would be funded by that person with a special need. In what situations might a person that's disabled have a good amount of money they need to put in a special needs trust?
Sure. So a lot of times we see if someone was involved in a car accident and they receive a settlement, a first party special needs trust is a really good tool if you are on income-based government benefits, to ensure that you can still receive that settlement, but it doesn't disqualify you from those government benefits. That's one of the biggest things that we personally see when dealing with a first party special needs trust.
Can I, if I'm a disabled person, can I set up my own special needs trust?
You can, through the first party special needs trust.
Okay. If I'm competent to do so, right?
Correct. Yes, it definitely depends on your competency. You have to have testamentary capacity in order to execute that document. So usually if we're dealing with a car accident situation, that individual, if they weren't severely injured and their capacity was not affected, they do have that ability to set up that trust to ensure they can get that settlement.
Sure. And if not, under D4A, it's what? A parent grandparent, legal guardian, like a
Mhm.
general guardian or guardian of the estate,
Mm-hmm.
one of those positions, or a court order,
Correct.
set up that special needs trust for me if I am a disabled person.
Correct. But do not have the capacity to execute it yourself.
Right, right.
Mhm.
A third party special needs trust that's funded by, if I wanted to set up a trust now during my life, and let's say a child who is disabled, and I wanted to go ahead and fund it with some money, because it's funded by a third party, right,
Mm-hmm.
for the benefit of the disabled person. That's the third part, the reference to the third party, right?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Cool.
Yeah.
So
I think it's also important to mention as well that if you have any types, like, so what actually goes into the special needs trust and how can you actually utilize that? So when you have retirement or you have bank accounts, you want to ensure that if one of your beneficiaries for those monies is going to be an individual that may require a special needs trust, that the special needs trust is named as the beneficiary, not the individual, because that's really going to negate what you just set up. And so really understanding how to utilize that special needs trust after you set it up is super important as well.
because these benefits programs, SSI, they're means tested. You can't have very much money or assets yourself.
Correct.
So, but and one of the biggest concerns for, say, a parent of a special needs child or grandchild is that if the parent's gone because they're so involved with the care of the child, that this child, if they leave this child some money, number one, who's going to be in charge of it?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, is it going to negate the benefit? And it's not just the SSI monthly payment that gets nixed. It's the Medicaid healthcare component. And usually that's the biggest thing, the Medicaid healthcare component that comes along with it. And even if you did, Samantha, give that special needs person money outright, let's say you did fail to change a beneficiary, gave them a good chunk of money. At that time, that person received that money. Not only would it kick that benefit offline, SSI, but also the Medicaid healthcare component. And in addition, whatever Medicaid had paid out during that person's life, Medicaid will reach out and try to collect that claim from whatever monies you gave them. Could take a huge chunk back out of whatever you gave that person as well.
Correct.
D4A trusts are really a carve out and a safe harbor, a safe place where a special needs person can have funds for their use and benefit for the rest, for as long as those funds last. And they're really very liberal and broad as far as what those monies can be used for. They can really be used for anything that SSI isn't meant for, which is like shelter and clothing, I think, or shelter food, or the benefit, the healthcare procedures, benefits that Medicaid pays for. Any additional healthcare procedures, things like that, can be paid for also from these special needs trusts. So
you can look at it as a way of supplementing your needs, and that that's a way to look at it. And when you're setting up a special needs trust, whether for a third party or whatever it may be, you want to ensure that the trustee that you're appointing, so this trustee is the person that is going to be tasked with everything that we're talking about to manage that money for that person. And so you need to ensure that the person that you are choosing has financial capacity, meaning that they have the ability to know how to navigate this, to be able to manage funds, to make sure that they are accounting for government benefit, and really someone that you can trust. And if you have children, and if you have a child that would require special needs trust and maybe another child that does not, you can certainly have the other child listed as a trustee for their sibling, but also thinking about, will that cause conflict? And maybe there needs to be a third party that can come in and manage that trust. So it's really also thinking about that. At the end of the day, that's what we do in a consultation, is we're thinking about this and we're making sure that the client understands all the different aspects of what needs to be done to make sure that you can actually effectuate what your goal is.
I think we have had a great discussion around special needs and supplemental needs trust. I think that planning is extremely important, and I know it's important to families who have loved ones that require that assistance. And I would be glad to, and thank you for joining us on our snow day. We're trying to stay warm in the office today and get some work done this morning. Everybody stay safe out there. Thank you for joining us for our talk regarding special needs and supplemental needs trust. If you or your family would like to sit down and discuss special needs planning, we do handle a lot of that at our firm. Give us a call. I would offer a free consult to sit down and do that. You can take advantage of that by calling 1-888-999-6600 or by scheduling directly on our schedules online at mcelderlaw.com/scheduling, mcelderlaw.com/scheduling. Thank you.
Thanks.